gals and guys. This is Michael Ferrari of Cinema de Meep. Welcome to the, what do we got, 59th bonus Patreon episode. Back on the podcast is my pal, David Nofire. Welcome back, David.
Thanks for having me. I'm so thrilled to talk about the Die Hard franchise. I'm sure you've talked about Die Hard 1, but I kind of doubt that you've talked about all the others on podcasts before, right?
No, I don't think I've talked about the sequels at all, which is kind of crazy. I don't know how that's not come up, really, but certainly Die Hard 1. I think I maybe did a 1988 podcast that was on someone's list. So we talked about that. I see over there behind you. Someone may be a fan of it.
Oh yeah, this is the original artwork that they did, and then they switched to the black and white one. Uh,
Mhm.
I'm not sure what the story is. The story I heard was that Bruce Willis didn't like this image, but I also heard that testing was kind of negative towards him as a star, and so they wanted to focus more on the building itself.
Oh, weird.
So not really sure what happened, but this is my favorite image from the
I,
promotional stuff.
I mean, yeah, that's what I remember when I went to go see it at the theater. Like, I just remember they were really selling it on him. And then I guess, yeah, like I said, maybe at some point they just switched over, which is very strange. But since Bruce, since the movie had made him a star, so um, that's cool. All right, so yeah, we're gonna talk about the Die Hard movies clearly, which we have seen a few times in our lives these past 35 years.
Yeah,
Um,
one of them I may have seen for the first time this week.
oh, there you go. So yes, we're not celebrating. Look at this. We're not celebrating the 35th anniversary of Die Hard. No, we're celebrating the 10th anniversary of a Good Day to Die Hard. That's what this podcast really is about. Yeah, that's the only ones, the two of these that are celebrating real anniversaries. But yeah, 35 seemed like the right time to talk about the Die Hard films, I think. I was gonna get to it for the 30th, but I didn't get around to it, so I felt like, okay, this now's the time. And we're in October 1st, so we're really in it for the rest of this year. So yeah, I gotta get them out by then. By the time the year is over. Let's talk about recently seen though. What have you been watching lately?
Uh, I haven't been watching a whole lot of stuff. I've gone to see a lot of movies at the theater, but nothing super remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the movie Bottoms a lot, and I know you saw that one too. I think I might
Mm-hmm.
have liked it a little more than you did.
I have a feeling it's one of those movies that I was a little disappointed. Like, I wanted it to be something more, but I enjoyed it. I just had it in my head as a different kind of movie that maybe like that really took it kind of pretty far. My wife had a similar feeling about it. I really liked the director's first movie, Shiva Baby. I thought it was a truly excellent debut feature. I really had a lot of fun. It's a teen comedy. You don't get a lot of good ones these days, so I should appreciate it in that level and not try to like not have the movie in my head so much because it's not my film. But I have a feeling it's going to be a movie I'm going to rewatch and enjoy more on multiple viewings because I have a feeling it's kind of layered in that way that multiple viewings might be even better. But I like the performances of the leads. Really, I like them a lot. They were really good and really funny. I like how different they were too, and that was kind of nice to see.
Yeah, great chemistry.
Great chemistry, funny. Yeah, it was. It's a really funny movie. It's maybe because I've seen so many kinds of movies like that over the last 30 years, 35 years since Heather's, or 34 years since Heather's, really. I know they recently celebrated the 35th anniversary of Heather's, but that's actually not true. It's 34th. 35 next year because it came out in 89. Um, was that right? Am I wrong?
I believe you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to a screening of Heather's 35th anniversary screening, but then it got canceled by Alamo Draft House. So I was bummed about that. Did you see that in the theater? They had a recent re-release.
Yeah, I didn't make it to that one. That was a Fathom event.
Mhm.
They've been putting out some good things lately. I'm not sure that I'm going to make it to any of them, but they've been getting some good stuff. Exorcist has been one that's that I wanted to play at the Circle Cinema where I program things, but they
Mhm.
have kind of a 90-day window, exclusive window, so didn't get to
Okay.
do that, but I'll go see it as an event
That's
instead.
lame if they have an exclusive window on classic film celebrating its 50th anniversary. They should be should be available to all, you know.
The thing to do is to get it several months early. And
I
I
see.
did that with one of their other releases. They have
Nice.
a is it the 30th of Scarface?
Hmm.
Um, and I played it earlier this year,
Mm,
so it was before the window started.
I see. Wow, the 40th of that. Wow, that's how old we are now.
Oh,
Um,
40th, yeah.
for those retro screenings, I think Fathom Events did a couple of John Carpenter movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the first
You
one was
live.
They Live, which I took my son to go see, and that was his first time seeing that film. I think the only other John Carpenter movie he watched before that was Big Trouble in Little China. So this was his second Carpenter experience. I had to take him to that because he's into science fiction, and I felt like a movie like this would kind of blow his mind a little bit. And it did. It did. He really, really liked it and remarked like how different of a movie it was than that he's ever seen before. Certainly, movies these days are not quite filled with the social commentary, but also like just kick-ass fun like that movie is. And yeah, I think he really dug that. That it was like a mix of that, and it had something to say. It had something on its mind, but it was also like, okay, I'm going to give you the fun too. Um, and of course, Carpenter's direction and music and all that stuff. Yeah, it works really well on the big screen. The audience was, there weren't a lot of people in it, which was I was a little bummed. Like, this movie should be packed because it's They Live, but the people who were there were clearly fans of it and they ate it up. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure.
got to play that one a couple of times, and
Mm-hmm.
it's played around here too. It played at the drive-in last year, and
Yeah,
then this Fathom event, and so I'd seen it a few times in the past few years, and that's probably why I didn't go to this one. But
right.
great movie all the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it just works as well as it did in 1988 as it does now, and yeah, it was nice. Yeah, seeing it for its 35th anniversary, and yeah, I always love that movie. The other one was Christine. I
Mhm.
didn't take my son to see that yet. I don't know. It is kind of horror. It's not horror R. It doesn't like a hard R movie at all. It feels a little bit light. If I were gonna take him to like I guess a Stephen King adaptation, that wouldn't have been a bad one. Just the timing didn't work out for his schedule. He was doing something else that day, and I went to go see it myself. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed Christine on the screen, and I don't know if it's like it's held its high regard over the years as some of the other John Carpenter movies. I feel like Christine definitely has its fans, but I feel like it's not as much as like They Live or The Thing or whatever. But I don't know. I always find it to be extremely entertaining and um, even moving, and the performances are really good. I know I've heard some negative things about Keith Gordon's performance, which I don't see at all. I think he's actually quite good in the movie. Um, and I've always found it to be an interesting love story too. Um, Christine, it's obviously it's a love triangle with the car. Some would say with the girl, but I don't see that. Actually, I think it's a love triangle between his best friend and him in the car, and it's really kind of touching by the end of the movie because his friend really cares about him, and of course, the car is taking him away from him, which is so it's kind of quite a tragic love story, if you will. But yeah, I like that movie a lot, and I think
Yeah,
John Carpenter added a lot to it. I think he knowingly added that dimension to the movie, but without overstating it, and it's kind of just there as subtext if you want to read into it or not, which was nice.
I definitely think Christine is an underrated movie in John Carpenter's filmography. Uh, it's it's up there pretty high for me. It'd be tough to rank them, but I
Yeah.
think it would be higher than most folks' estimations of it would be higher than they would put it.
Yeah.
I watched the 4K a few months ago. Oh, beautiful. The stuff at the beginning when the cars are going down the assembly line,
Yeah.
it's just gorgeous.
Yeah, I look good on the screen, and it's a good adaptation too. It came out as the book was coming out, pretty much. Like they grabbed the rights to that pretty quickly and adapted it. But it's a good adaptation. It's solid, and of course, Stephen King adaptations are not always that, but I definitely ranked that up there with some of the better ones. Anything else you want to add today for recently seen, or?
Yeah, not much. I think the summer was good. Not my favorite. I've been watching Succession over for my second watch.
Okay.
But on HBO. But yeah, I mean that's kind of about it. We're heading into fall season now. I saw the Equalizer 3 recently, which I enjoyed a lot. I enjoyed
I
that
have
whole.
never seen an Equalizer movie, so I have no idea like how those are.
I enjoyed all three of those, and I like how each one is kind of a little bit different. Like the second one is got like a disaster movie element to it, nature, like a big hurricane and stuff. It was fun. They're definitely fueled by Denzel's charisma and presence.
Right. Yeah, they definitely seem like movie star movies.
Yeah.
Which are fun, and I just never I don't know. I always, when I hear that title, I just think of the show, and it's hard for me to wrap my head around that it's this big movie, and it's also another show too, right? There's like a Queen Latifah show, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny where the franchise went, but yeah, maybe I'll maybe my wife expressed interest in seeing at least the third one, so we'll see if we'll get around to those and watch those maybe at some point. Not much else on my list. The Goonies was the other retro movie we went to go see as a family, and of course it's the Goonies, and it's a lot of fun. And I don't trust adults who say they don't like the Goonies. So, it's like the saying in The Breakfast Club: when you grow up, your heart dies. When you grow up, your heart dies, and you don't like the Goonies. So, we love the Goonies. Meg 2 was the other movie.
Yeah, saw that too.
I wasn't a fan of the Meg 1, and I have to say Meg 2, not a fan. These movies weren't meant for me. I don't know. I just don't enjoy them. They're very loud, and I don't know. I can't connect to the characters in either of those movies, and I need to have that. I know it's kind of silly in a shark movie, but I look at some of the better shark movies, and I'm like, yeah, because I like the characters. It's just this one's just pretty silly and over the top, but I thought it was also kind of boring too, which is weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not great effects either, and just I think the trailer looked like a lot of a little bit of fun, but it didn't quite live up to it once they get to the climax with the island there.
Yeah, it just seemed like it had ideas. I don't know. Just didn't see that. I felt like the execution wasn't what they sold the movie as. So it wasn't that into it. Nothing much else on my list. I'm just doing a 1993 marathon right now. So I'll have that podcast by the end of the year, celebrating the 30th anniversary of 1993 and watching a ton of 1993 movies. And it's been a big journey and a lot of fun. And even if the podcast is whatever it is, it's fine. I care about seeing the movies first, and I'm having a real ball watching them. So all right, that's the list. I have other things I can get into, but we have 5 movies to get into today, so let's talk about them. We'll get into the first one next. Let me play. We're gonna do a trailer for this one. Here is a trailer for Die Hard.
We thank you one and all and wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
It's Christmas Eve in L.A. But a team of terrorists...
You want money? What kind of terrorists are you?
Who said we were terrorists?
...have their own holiday plans.
And I'm telling you, you're just gonna have to kill me.
Okay. We do it the hard way.
But the one thing they didn't plan on was New York cop John McClane.
Got invited to the Christmas party by mistake. Who knew?
Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee Ki-Yay, mother...
And you'll have it.
They have already killed one hostage.
This channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
Lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza? Come to Papa, honey. You really an American?
Only if New Jersey counts.
What does he think he's doing?
Job.
They're using artillery on us.
You idiot.
It's not the police. It's him.
He's an easy guy to like
Welcome to the party, pal.
and a hard man to kill. Bruce Willis, Die Hard.
Hope you enjoyed that trailer, and let's read off the back of the box. What do we got here?
All right, looking at the VHS box right here, we've got the following synopsis for Die Hard. High above the city of LA, a team of terrorists has seized a building, taken hostages, and declared war. But one man has managed to escape detection, an off-duty cop. He's alone, tired, and the only chance anyone has. Bruce Willis stars as New York City detective John McClane, newly arrived in Los Angeles to spend the Christmas holiday with his estranged wife, Bonnie Bedelia. But as McClane waits for his wife's office party to break up, terrorists seize control of the building. While the terrorist leader, Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman, and his savage henchman, Alexander Godunov, round up hostages, McClane slips away unnoticed. Armed with only a service revolver and his cunning, McClane launches his own one-man war. A crackling thriller from beginning to end. Die Hard explodes with heart-stopping suspense.
Those CBS Fox videos were sometimes pretty wordy, but I liked them. I just like the uniformity of them, and I don't know, something about seeing a CBS Fox video brings back nostalgia for sure, instant nostalgia at the video store. This one had like one of the rare action movies to have like positive quotes on it on the VHS box. Right, you never saw like a lot of the action movies you rented at the video store. You didn't see a lot of like a critical quotes on them, right? Because it was probably hard for them to find critics that actually liked a lot of those action movies of the 80s. But this one, of course, was the one that's clicked with critics. What's your take on Die Hard?
Die Hard is my favorite action movie ever.
There you go. Wow.
I think a lot of people would say that. I actually got asked this question fairly recently, and I had to think about it. My answer has always been Die Hard, and I had to rethink because some of the people that were answering the question were saying things that were newer, like Mad Max Fury Road. And sure, that's great set pieces, a lot of heart, good story, but I think Die Hard just clicks all the boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Great villain, great setting, great use of location, great supporting cast, great story, great theme, great performances.
Yeah.
Great music. Can't ask for anything more in an action movie.
It's got it all. Yeah, that's true. Star-making performance. Bruce Willis. Yeah, I think on this viewing, because I've seen it a lot over the years, and I'm trying to think like what stayed with me this viewing most. I think the music. I forgot how good that music is and how like evocative it is and how much it really elevates the action and everything. I've always liked Alan Rickman, of course. I feel like I've always felt too that as good as Die Hard is, like it would have been a much lesser movie without Alan Rickman as the villain. He just adds, I don't know, charisma, and it was an unusual choice for a sorry, I need that. unusual choice for a villain at the time, and it's for terrorists, right? Terrorists are always perceived to be as evil brown people in movies, and certainly were after this. James Cameron, looking at you. And I don't know. It just like it was an unusual choice, and to bring such a actor of such caliber to that role like really worked. I mean, because Bruce Willis was a great TV star and comic presence. He didn't quite have you wouldn't associate him with acting chops, right? So, but to have an actor to play off like who's so good like Rickman was like perfect, you know. And it really elevated Bruce's performance too, and everything else. So music, Alan Rickman, the look of the movie it's slick, of course, that 80s slickness that you would start seeing in the late 80s movies like Lethal Weapon, which we talked about on this podcast. And I don't know, it just looks so good and just filmed so well. John McTiernan's direction is so good. Everything it needs to be, he's taking like an aesthetic that we're very familiar with now, but maybe then was felt new and fresh. And yeah, I mean, up until this point you had these kinds of action movies, like terrorist action movies, but they weren't made with such like caliber as this film is. With, I mean, it was the budget was a healthy budget for the time, but it wasn't like and there were other movies that had probably bigger budgets, but it just utilizes every department is like on the top of its game. Like you mentioned, all of your checklist was like right on with everything. Like all those departments and were doing their job really well. They're bringing the best to it. And I don't know, every time I watch it, I'm just like really into it and have a lot of fun. And I know it's coming, but I'm still there. And all the action set pieces are so well done. I love movies set in buildings. So that's already like a big plus, like going in. And I just put up the poster for Poltergeist 3 today, for poster swap day. And of course it's a horror theme because of being October. But yeah, another great building. I love buildings and movies, and this is like one of the best buildings and movies kind of storyline, because it utilizes a lot of the building and done so well because there's a mix of sets and practical locations and all that stuff. So I miss that in movies. I feel like now a lot of things are like, well, you know, they could film it anywhere and green screen it, and it's just not the same, right? But back then you got a sense of that real quality, even though like you're in a location that's a set with a fake backdrop like this one has, and it's got a memorable fake backdrop in this one. I love that stuff, and I think it does it so well. And I'd rather have that over a CGI green screen. And you know, Die Hard just like really makes me happy when I watch it. It was a great summer movie. I liked that it was a Christmas movie in summer. Yeah, Christmas in July. It's a pure Christmas movie from the very beginning with the music and setting up the tone. Of course, Christmas in LA is a very different experience from Christmas in like back east, and you'll get that soon with the next one. But I just love the feeling of it and everything about it. It's you know, I can totally understand why you'd make that declarative statement that's your favorite action movie of all time, because it's that good. So I hear you.
Yeah, I want to talk about some of the things that you just mentioned. I might be working backwards a little bit, sort of talking about the look of the movie. The photography from Jan de Bont, it's wonderful. All those lens flares, you really feel like you're in a location. And somebody who probably has studied this more than I don't look at it, but you know, you see a sense of where everything is in the building. And so you kind of know, and the way the camera is set up, it gives you an idea of where things are, so you can anticipate that. And I think that lends to the claustrophobia of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the claustrophobia of it is really, I didn't mention it before, but that's what's a huge part of what makes this movie such a thrill ride and kind of a rush. It's like there are very few action movies that I've walked away from the first time feeling that way. I felt that way with Aliens. I felt that way with Die Hard. I felt that way with Speed. You just really feel, like your heart's racing and like you just saw something very exciting. Another thing about just kind of not the look of it so much, but just the cast of characters, the folks who are in it. It's a Joel Silver production, and Lawrence Gordon's one of the producers, and so you see people who were in those movies that they also made the action movies. So you see people who were in Die Hard. You see people who were in Lethal Weapon. You see Robert Zemeckis' wife, who's in a lot of those pictures. So it's kind of like seeing friends again. So that's kind of comforting, and that's something that you see. You really feel just kind of this kind of a sameness, but sort of a comforting sameness. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you feel that in the second one as well. We'll talk about that. But kind of going backwards, I think that one of the things about this movie is I think it's just one of the most influential action movies of all time. And I think part of the reason is because what we had before that decade you were talking about, that was kind of unstoppable action heroes. Arnold, Sly, very muscly big dudes, Rambo. And then this is something different. This is someone who's afraid of flying, and it's his fear of flying that kind of puts him in this even more vulnerable position where he's making fists with his toes on the carpet, and he ends up the entire rest of the movie barefoot.
Right.
And just that, and just kind of a flawed character, because he's got difficulties with his wife, and you can definitely see her point of view. He can't be the easiest guy to get along with. You can just kind of tell, even though you're seeing him, you see he has kind of a wandering eye a little bit. You see one of the first things he does when he's talking to her is just he just naturally starts up a fight again with her after being away from her for 6 months, and hits his head against the wall. It's just a really, really great character that we hadn't really seen a whole lot of before that. Influential in that sense, but also influential in the Die Hard on many films which were made that kind of tried to emulate that success. Die Hard on a bus, Die Hard on a boat, Die Hard on a mountain. All those films owe a great debt to that movie. What else did we talk about there? Yeah, just you talked about the difference between McClane and Hans, and that's a great contrast there, because you've got McClane, who's the street smart cop who talks in Jeopardy references, Western references, and at one point Hans looks thoroughly confused by what he's hearing on the radio, and Hans is there quoting Plutarch and wearing a suit he's talking about Takagi's John Phillips London suit,
which he claims to have like a couple of himself. Yeah.
He says, I have two myself.
He's a man of class and distinction. Yes.
And McClane has no use for that. And in fact, the earlier scene when Ellis, played by Hartbachner, is wanting to show McClane the Rolex that the company bought for his wife, he has no interest in seeing it whatsoever. So yeah, I think it's terrific. We could talk about this for a long time. What other things do you want to talk about with this movie? I mean, I know I want to talk about some of the supporting cast.
They're great. I mean, the casting of the henchman, of course, as the box says, is perfect. Alexander Goodenough, right? Goodenough. I remembered him from Witness when I saw this in the theater. Like, oh, it's the guy from Witness, and he has a great presence. And just like, yeah, he could be like what they consider like the typical like Euro bad guy you see a lot of in movies maybe after this, and but I think he had a lot of presence in that quiet role, and quiet menace to him, and of course when he gets his little tete-a-tete with Bruce Willis, it's great. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And then it's like a very varied group of guys, and you got a computer hacker who occasionally says like kind of weird things, um, and everybody else in that group that kind of pop up. And yeah, I like that a lot. I like the group a lot. It's a nice, a lot of contrast in this movie. This is a movie about contrast for sure. I think they went out of their way to cast people who are different from each other to give it more of that contrast, and I like that about it. That they were trying something different. I don't know whose responsibility it was. I'm sure like McTiernan brought a lot to it, but yeah, I like that a lot. It's a very well cast movie for sure. And of course, we didn't mention one of the other villains of the movie, from our villain from Ghostbusters and Real Genius, uh gets to be here, and Bonnie Bedelia gets to play off of him, and or well, no, that's the second movie, right? I'm confusing that one, but she gets to have there's some memorable moments with him and the cops. Paul Gleason gets to be in this movie. The cop stuff too is fun, when it comes back to the cop stuff. And of course, Reginald Van Johnson, the beat cop who gets to help McClane. I like the limo driver too. I think he's really good. There's a lot of people in this movie. It's like it's a fairly long movie. It's like 130 something minutes. But it doesn't. I mean, it's because it's so well edited. 80s movies. I will always go to bat for 80s movies with editing. Like some of the best editing is in 80s movies ever. And this one is certainly one of the better edited action movies because it has, it's that long, but it doesn't feel it. Like it moves by really quickly. It has a lot of characters, and they're edited together so well. And it's just a big supporting cast. It reminds me of like a disaster movie, this movie, because that's kind of what they're playing with too, like the idea of an action movie but also disaster movie kind of mixed together, which is fun, and and kind of unusual for the time, because disaster movies were their own thing, and like cop movies were on their own thing, and action movies were on their own thing, say in the 70s, right? But then this was a nice mix of like all those elements together, which is nice. I have a lot to say too.
And then you mentioned a lot of folks, and then the great couple scenes with the FBI guys that come in. Right. Never do I not crack up laughing at the scene when they're coming in at the building and they have their little exchange, and Robert Davi says that it's like Saigon, and his partner says, "I was in junior high, dickhead." I just love it. It makes me laugh every time. And it's got a great kind of foil. They're sort of some of the people are a little cartoonishly dumb, like or officious, like Paul Gleason's character, but he's terrific. He's terrific in the movie. Yeah. You love to hate his wife's coworker Ellis, the guy who's doing coke on her office or on her desk at the beginning.
He's so great
to negotiate
because he's like a very 80s character. Obviously, he's like someone who would have been in like Wall Street, the movie. So it was nice to see those kind of characters bite it. Honestly, that part of like 80s coked out greed getting killed pretty early. Yeah, in a way, a lot of ways, this movie is an indictment against like capitalism and the rich. A lot of the wealthy people, or people who are ladder climbing, like Hans Gruber, get it. You bite it. So but Holly gets to live, even though she's trying to be part of that group, which is nice.
Yeah, you kind of wonder at the end of the picture if she's going to continue to work for the Nakatomi Corporation, and she does, because you see her folder in Die Hard 2 that still has that emblem on there, so she's still working for them. Yeah,
she probably has a better position at the company, considering like some of the big shots of the company are dead by the end of this movie. Yeah. I wondered, I always wondered about that, like moving on that company after everything that happens in this movie. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, there's so many elements to it. But it's an iconic film for a reason. And we love it for a lot of reasons. I'm gonna talk about some of the technical stuff. So it came out July 20th, 1988. So it's a nice summer release. It's always nice to see like a winter movie in summer. I always appreciate that. I know some people have problems with like, I want to see a winter movie in winter and so on, but I like that when it's really hot out and you see something cold. Like we watched The Thing this summer because it was really hot, and it makes you feel cold. Cools you down. So it was nice to have that. $28 million budget. It made $81.6 million at the US box office. It doesn't seem like a lot, but that was a lot for $1988. $139 million worldwide. Definitely a hit, big hit. It opened at number 3 though. It wasn't the number 1 movie of the weekend of that week. It came out. The number 1 movie of that week was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was still playing, and number 2 was Coming to America. So it didn't open like at number 1, but it's one of those movies, word of mouth movies, that it grew as it went along.
Yeah, it had legs. It played for months in the theater.
It definitely played for a while. Deadpool was number 4. Midnight Run was number 5, which was also new that day. So you got to see Die Hard or Midnight Run as your new movie choice. Imagine that. Imagine those days, guys.
Pretty great weekend.
Long time ago. Bambi re-release was number 6. Big Top Pee-wee was number 7, which was also new that day. Caddyshack 2 was also new that day, number 8. Number 9, Big, and number 10, Bull Durham. I mean, a lot of solid movies in that top 10 there. Also playing Short Circuit 2, Arthur 2, Phantasm 2, Crocodile Dundee 2. All the 2s were playing. License to Drive, Great Outdoors, Red Heat, A Fish Called Wanda, Mr. North, Pascali's Island, Willow, Big Business, Patty Rocks, Presidio, White Mischief, and Handful of Dust were also playing in New York City theaters at that time. I saw it at the Marlboro Theater, which was a theater playing up the block from where I live, so it was easy to go see it. I knew it was John McTiernan. I was excited about that. Rarely was I excited about movies from directors back then. I was like starting to appreciate directors, but I knew it was a director of Predator, so I was like, yes, because I was a huge Predator fan in 1987. So, like, sign me up. I knew it was going to be good, and it was. Wasn't disappointed, not at all. So, all right. Anything else to add before we move on?
I think we kind of covered it.
Yeah. All right. Let's get on to Die Hard 2, Die Harder. I'm going to play the trailer. Here's the trailer. Here we go.
Emergencies. We are in a code yellow. Instrument landing system is down.
Backup systems won't come up.
Every system's dead.
These guys shut us down.
Attention all controllers. We have a code red alert. We just bought maybe 2 hours. After that, those planes low on fuel aren't going to be circling. They're going to be dropping on the White House lawn.
I want every officer recalled and assembled in body armor with full weaponry in the motor pool in 5 minutes. It's time to kick it.
Our own SWAT team's gone.
Well, maybe they're just a little bit more creative than you think.
Start looking for a new miracle.
Who the hell is this?
We don't need a loose cannon on this deck. You get the hell out of my office before I throw you out of my damn airport. You're the wrong guy in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Story of my life.
They say lightning doesn't strike twice.
That's how I spent Christmas last year.
They were wrong.
McLean, is this what you were expecting?
Nah, this is just the beginning.
Bruce Willis, Die Hard 2. Die Harder.
Okay. On a snowy Christmas Eve in the nation's capital, a team of terrorists have seized a major international airport and now hold thousands of holiday travelers hostage. The terrorists, a renegade band of crack military commandos led by a murderous rogue officer, William Sadler, have come to rescue a drug lord from justice. They're prepared for every contingency except one. John McClane, an off-duty cop seized by a feeling of deadly deja vu. Bruce Willis returns as the heroic cop who battles not only terrorists but also an incompetent airport police chief played by Dennis Franz. The hard-headed commander John Amos of the Army's anti-terrorist squad and a deadly winter snowstorm. The runways are littered with death and destruction, and John McClane is in a race against time. His wife, Bonnie Bedelia, is trapped in one of the planes circling somewhere overhead, desperately low on fuel. It's all-out war, a heart-stopping, jet-propelled journey through excitement and terror. Fasten your seatbelts. Color, 1990. Approximately 124 minutes. So yeah, it's a CBS Fox video box. Love those. So Die Hard 2 came out just 2 quick years later. You got a sequel to the big hit Die Hard, and like everybody else in 1990, I was ready for it. I was excited. We were hoping for a sequel back then, and it's one of those stories that could like easily, yes, it could. You could see John McClane be put anywhere, and he is put anywhere in these movies, but it could have easily been a case of like the back of that VHS box saying deja vu, and it feeling like, okay, we've already seen this. Why are we seeing this again? Kind of feeling. This one, you don't get that sense when watching it at all. You're excited to see John McClane doing what he did in the first movie in a different setting. I mean, it just felt right. It felt right to kind of have history repeat itself. Obviously, sequels are made as cash grabs and for a lot of studios, but I felt like this one took the time and energy to make sure a lot of the details were right, and some of the story elements that to make sure they work well enough in a sequel where it didn't feel like you're just repeating everything. And that magical ingredient that pulls it all together is, of course, for me, director Renny Harlin. So he was hired to do this movie while he was editing, while he was like, I think still making actually The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, which is kind of crazy. They realized they needed someone who could really get the job done quickly. And have, and he was at the time a very energetic director. He had a lot of that to spare, and it's often what got him jobs on these movies. Certainly when he made Nightmare on Elm Street 4, he got the job because they only had a 2-week window to get the movie going, because of a writer's strike. And he had a very small like production window, a pre-production window, and a very small production window to get it done. And I think he was hired like in spring, and it came out in August or something in that one. This one, he had a similar experience, but he got a lot done in a little amount of time. And you just, I don't know, just added like a sense of fun, grandeur, taking everything you liked about the first movie, but putting it into another context. And making it just so thoroughly entertaining and upping the ante. The violence felt like appropriately heightened, but not to the point where it felt like it was just all out gruesome violence for no good reason. There are moments and beats in the movie like, wow, that's pretty fucked up, which I liked and appreciated. And action set pieces that just really work and are fun to watch 33 years later. I don't know. I just something about the sequel like really makes me happy every time I watch it. And like sometimes I'm like, wow, this is every bit as good as the first movie in my eyes. I love the snowy setting, and I know they had a big trouble getting that snowy setting while making this movie. They had to keep moving like the production around to find snow, to make snow and all that stuff. And but you couldn't tell while watching it that they had all that trouble doing that. It just feels it captures that atmosphere of snow really well and on the East Coast um and yeah, I don't know. I just like watch it. I love an airport movie too. And going back to what we liked about the first Die Hard movie, it was like a disaster movie. This one really ups that ante with the disaster part of these movies, and it really feels like that. And having an airport location, of course, recalling the airport movies themselves, and it really feels like John McClane's character, even though he's like the same guy, they gave him a lot of like little moments to shine, which is nice. He doesn't get lost in the action. He gets to be, you know, the McClane that we care about. And yeah, I'm a big fan. I have more to say, but I want to hear what Die Hard 2 means to you. Die Harder, not just Die Hard 2, like it's on the title. You mentioned, right? They only have Die Hard 2 on the title card.
Right. They should have put Die Harder in there, but it is, as it comes on the screen in the movie, it's just Die Hard. Die Hard 2. Yeah, I like this movie a lot. I think talking about some of the things you mentioned, Rennie Harlin didn't have a lot of time to make this picture. It was a pretty rushed schedule, and it had a huge budget, but there are certainly some things that, you know, like I could nitpick a little bit. But he did a really great job. I love Rennie Harlin as a director. I love Long Kiss Goodnight, probably the most of his films. So I think he was a fine addition to this franchise, and I'm glad that he did it. Talking about some of the things that I love that you mentioned, the setting, the airport setting. I want to say the bad guys have a great cast of henchmen in this one. A really great bunch of faces. You have people who you're going to see later on in life who become famous, like John Leguizamo, like Robert Patrick. You have Vondie Curtis Hall. You have who else? Oh, the first henchman that McClane kills is the actor who played Johnny Cakes on The Sopranos. So it's really stacked with great supporting henchmen. They don't have a whole lot of dialogue, but
right.
They're yeah. The villain, you have three villains in this picture. You have William Sadler, and you have a General Esperanza who comes in midway, and then there's a third villain as well. If you haven't seen the movie, I'll just say that there's a third villain. And one of the things, when I was saying nitpicking with General Esperanza, he's being flown into the United States, and he's guarded by one guy on a plane, and he asks the guard for a light for a cigar, and so he's smoking a cigar, and you know something's going to happen. And then later on, a good deal later on, we come back and he's choking the guard, and that's one of the things that I think we needed to see how that came about, instead of that kind of just cut to that. We want to find out how that actually happened. Yeah. So there are some things where, you know, this movie could have used some more touches, but on the whole, I really like this movie. It's fun. I think that they let Bruce Willis improv a little bit, and it's sort of to mixed effect. Not the best improv guy I've ever seen, but it is still fun. He's still really fun in the character. And another thing that we see a lot in the first two movies is women love John McClane. The flight attendant in the first film, just the looks they give him, and then the woman who's working behind the desk at the airport, just instant love for John McClane.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always kind of
he's doing the whole ring
to,
thing, like, look at me,
yeah, kind of funny to see that. It's just kind of it's very, like unsubtle, very unsubtle.
No, it's not. But I don't know. I like that though too. I kind of, it's like little reminders that he's like this. He's like the everyman, but he also has like kind of a charm that attracts people, for sure.
Yeah, and he's very good in the movie. I think that the movie kind of has a similar feel to the first one. I think they're definitely trying to replicate a lot of the beats, but you can also kind of tell that it's done by a lot of the same hands. I love that they use Valverde as the country that General Esperanza is from. Valverde was used in other Joel Silver pictures, I believe. Was that the movie? Was that the country in Predator 2 and some of the other pictures? Maybe so. Even no, not Predator 2. Predator. It's been used several times in Joel Silver movies. I could come up with a list, but it's always fun to see that fictional country come into play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything else with that? I think that the thing that they do with that is, like you said, kind of try to put him in the same situation, have it happen again. And I think that works once, but I think the filmmakers are smart in the subsequent films to kind of veer away from that, replicating that scenario, but it's to mixed effect, and we'll see that as we talk about the other films.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that. I think it was smart in this case because they knew what worked about the first movie was that disaster movie kind of thing with the building, right? To have a logical place to set a disaster movie would be at an airport or airplanes, because obviously for obvious reasons. So it's smart to move it to that location and then have the running like through line for the movie is that these planes that are circling because of this whole thing, and to have that impending disaster as a threat to keep John McClane doing what he's doing, having his wife in the air, is really a really smart touch. These Die Hard movies, famously, the first 4 Die Hard movies were famous for their having been not written to be Die Hard movies, but to be from various source materials and scripts. First movie was based on a novel. The screenplay was written based on this novel. The second movie was based on a script, right?
I think it was based on a different novel called 58 Minutes.
Oh, right, a different novel, right?
I believe it was Walter Wager.
That's right. And the third movie, yeah. So each movie had its own thing, they were based on other things, and so they took these materials, knowing how they could retrofit them into Die Hard movies. And I don't know, that may have been the secret ingredient to make these movies work, and to have all these elements come together in these ways. I don't know, something about the look of the movie, mixed with the location stuff, works for me. The winter location stuff really works. I like building movies. I like airport airplane movies. When I did all the disaster movie podcasts, the 70s disaster movie podcasts, I discovered that almost all my favorite ones were the ones in the airplanes. And there were a lot of disaster movies I watched, I don't know, 100 disaster movies, and almost all the ones that I really gravitated towards were the airplane ones, even the TV ones where it was clearly a really cheap airplane set. I don't know, something about that works for me, and used here in this big budget movie context in a Die Hard film, and that makes total sense, and it just adds to the charm for me. I like that the villain, the main villain, is introduced naked. I felt
naked, curled up, doing Tai Chi.
Yeah, I feel wow, this is I remember definitely as a 15-year-old seeing in the theater, that's a different way to go. It takes you by surprise at the beginning of the movie. It also feels like maybe a European director at the helm. An American director probably wouldn't have done that, making that choice. In an American action, very American action movie, having a naked bad guy, which is like it just like makes total sense. Like having of your villain stripped down to nothing to show you how bad they are, how badass they are, which is a really cool way to introduce your villain. He's a very different villain too from um from Hans Gruber. Like you're not getting that talky intellectual type here with William Sadler. You're getting a ex-military guy, whatever, having that element, and having military people as bad people makes it interesting too. Gives it another level. I feel like that was also another thing that a lot of other movies started duplicating after this movie too. Die Hard movies are very influential in action movies, clearly, and not a lot of them could pull off what this movie does because it is such a big budgeted film. Like to have the mix of action and like airplane disasters. You know, there were some good airplane action movies to come in the 90s. Specifically Passenger 57 is one of my favorite ones, and Turbulence definitely come to mind as two of my favorite airplane set actioners. But you had Die Hard 2, Die Hard are leading the pack. It's nice to have Dennis Franz as your antagonist. I guess he's the equivalent of what in the first movie, like Paul Gleason and the cops, like always like getting in his way. You have little moments, little different side characters. You have little moments and big action set pieces, and as a mix of all those things that add up to me, you have a major airplane disaster in this movie, which like I know Rennie Harlan, you know, they had troubles with that one. He was very much pro having that disaster in the movie. The studio didn't want it. They felt there was too much too much death that they spend the rest of the movie like mourning this flight that crashes sadly. But he was upping the stakes clearly, and that's what a good sequel should do. You can't go backwards. Once you do these movies, like you have to kind of increase them in different ways, or just like retool them in different ways, and this one does it so well. I mean, I honestly, every time I watch it, I'm like, do I like this movie more than Die Hard 1? Or just as much? Certainly as just as much. Always have a lot of fun with it, and going to see it in 1990 in the theater was like a big deal, and I remember the theater experience really well. And I remember going with my neighbor next door, a friend of mine. He was like a little bit older. He was into the Die Hard movie, for the first movie as well, so we were both really excited to go see it, and it lived up to it, and 33 years later it still does. So that says a lot to me for a sequel, which is, you know, we talked about Lethal Weapon movies and like how some of the sequels like worked, like the second one, but I feel like as a sequel, Die Hard 2 even works more as a sequel for me than Lethal Weapon 2, which is crazy, but I don't want to compare, but rewatching it again recently, I just felt like it did. I just had
I'd go the other way with that, with Lethal Weapon. In higher regard, Lethal Weapon 2. But this is a whole lot of fun. But some of the stuff that isn't fun, it's upsetting, but it works. And like you said, it ups the stakes. The plane stuff. There's a certain artificiality in these movies where you see brands or industries being used in a negative light. So no one would want to fly whatever airplane or airline this is. You're not going to see an actual airline. So that's the sort of thing that you just sort of take with a grain of salt. But then when it comes to what they do with the planes up there, you're probably as an audience member expecting something different to happen. And so I think that what they do is is good, and that was, I think that was Rennie Harlin's choice there, because they could have gone with a like a FedEx type plane, and in the movie Speed, when the bus crashes into the plane, it's actually a Pacific Courier plane, which is the same brand as the truck that drives in Hans and all of his henchmen
funny.
at the very beginning of Die Hard.
Yeah.
And then
A
there'll
little
be
Jan de Bont connection there too, huh?
yeah, there'll be a little reference to that too later on in our talk. So yeah, I'm all for that. It was very intense, and it's still to this day it's intense and upsetting, the stuff in the middle of the picture. I think it could be said that it's like a little mean-spirited, the movie, but like some of it, some of the violence, whenever I first saw it, I thought it was a little more gratuitous. But watching movies just in general, it doesn't take me out of it like it did when I was younger. But then I think about Die Hard, and there are certain shots that are certainly like that, like the shot where the henchman gets shot in the legs and he comes hurtling towards the window and kind of in slow motion. That's just as violent as it is in Die Hard 2. So it may have a bit of a mean streak, but I think that the stuff with the planes in the middle of the pictures, it really works for the movie.
Yeah, it gives it a different, like, it takes it away from being cartoonish, right? It suddenly feels like, oh, this could be real. Like, right, disasters happen a lot, and sadly, but in real life, so you can connect to it. Like, this is stuff you've seen, like in news footage, like, oh shit. In a movie that could have been a cartoon, which might be in later movie installment, but it just, it works for me. And where the past I was like, always like, wow, that was a lot for this kind of movie. I remember in 1990, I think it was summer release too, Predator 2, being disappointed in that movie. But it's also the movie that I don't go back to that much. I'm curious to go back to Predator 2 to see if my opinions changed on that one. But of the summer, there's a lot of sequels this summer. Certainly this time period there were a lot of sequels. I just think it's one of the better ones for me, and I always go back to it and have a total blast with it. But I have a feeling I do that a lot with a lot of Rennie Harlin movies. Like you mentioned with Long Kiss Goodnight is like one of my favorites, and it's my wife's all-time favorite Christmas movie. So we go back to that every Christmas for sure. And it was nice again seeing a winter set movie in summer, so it worked.
I was mistaken when I mentioned the countries that Valverde was depicted in. It was depicted in Commando, the Arnold Schwarzenegger
okay
movie.
There you go. Yeah.
And so I think I was just kind of conflating some other pictures in my head, but it is so much fun to see that.
Yeah, it's definitely continuity there, which is nice. And certainly these sequels.
And I think that's a device from Stephen E. D'Souza, who's one of the screenwriters who came in, didn't develop the picture, but kind of helped shape it. Both 1 and 2.
Yeah, you definitely sense that too. Like even if like for whatever reason, like the credit, in the final credits of the movie, like he probably had a bigger hand in it. And a lot of screenwriters, that happens where they do a script or rewrite someone else's script, but then the original writers get the full credit or something, because of arbitration with the Writers Guild or whatever. But you definitely sense a continuity between the first two movies for sure, with a lot of things that work. And I would definitely attribute Stephen D'Souza for that for sure. It opened July 3rd, 1990. So yeah, as it was sold as the big July 4th movie, it certainly was that. It had a $70 million budget, so they definitely upped the budget. But it made $117 million in the US box office alone, and then $240 million worldwide. So that for 1990, that was a huge hit. a huge summer hit. So it opened obviously at number 1 this time. So number 2 was Days of Thunder. Top Gun hat here. Dick Tracy, number 3. Jetsons the movie was new that week at number 4. Number 5 was Total Recall. Number 6 was another 48 Hours. Number 7 was RoboCop 2. So like, not a great summer of sequels. Predator 2, another 48 Hours. RoboCop 2 was number 7. Number 8 was Ghost Dad. A good sequel though. Gremlins 2 came out at number 9, and arguably one of the best sequels of all time, Gremlins 2. And number 10 was Pretty Women, which had been around for a while by that point. Also playing Betsy's Wedding, Back to the Future 3, which is another sequel I'm not that crazy about, Bird in a Wire, Jesus of Montreal, Last Exit to Brooklyn, The Cook, the Thief, The Wife and Her Lover, Monsieur Hire, Cinema Paradiso, Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. As you can see, cinema was changing by 1990. Longtime Companion, Wild Orchid, Q&A, Too Beautiful for You, Hunt for Red October, Henry V, which was not a good sequel, and Cadillac Man. So there were a lot of like early 90s indie movies coming in. Foreign movies were definitely getting a more of a stronghold in at least New York and LA. This is like looking at New York theaters, and we're getting a lot of those kinds of movies, which is nice to have as a contrast to something like Die Hard 2. So that was Die Hard 2. Anything else to add, or we can move on to our next one?
Just that pretty good list of movies you just mentioned there for 1990, but boy, the one with Die Hard when it came out, that was just stellar. And so, you know, you're seeing a lot of sequels in this. Like you said, Gremlins 2 is wonderful. I think that's the best sequel of the bunch, but I think Die Hard 2 is probably second. I'm also a fan of Predator 2, because I think they did something different with that picture, so that was a lot of fun. But there's some mediocrity in there too, for sure.
I'm gonna make it a job to a mission to rewatch that this month, because I haven't done that in so long. Do that. All right, let's move on to our next movie. Here is the trailer.
They're headed east on 72nd towards the park.
He's a New York cop with a nose for trouble.
He's taking the scenic route.
A knack for making enemies. And a talent for beating the odds. On a good day, he's a great cop. On a bad day, he's the best there is.
Oh, what happened? You got a AAA card?
Die Hard with a vengeance.
The third installment of the hugely successful Die Hard series reteams Bruce Willis and director John McTiernan in a new action-adventure extravaganza of special effects, unexpected comedy, and non-stop thrills. This time, New York cop John McClane, Willis, is the personal target of the mysterious Simon, Jeremy Irons, a terrorist determined to blow up the entire city if he doesn't get what he wants. Accompanied by an unwilling civilian partner, Samuel L. Jackson, McClane careens wildly from one end of New York City to the other as he struggles to keep up with Simon's deadly game. It's a battle of wits between a psychopathic genius and a heroic cop who once again finds himself having a really bad day. 1995, color, approximately 131 minutes. So we're definitely switching gears with this one.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the original turned on its head. The original takes place in Los Angeles. This takes place in New York. The original takes place at Christmas, although it's not a wintry Christmas. This takes place very much so in the heat of summer. You feel it. You realize it very early with the Summer in the City song, but just I think the movie depicts it as well. You can definitely feel kind of a sweltering sense of heat in this picture as it goes along. And like I said earlier, the Pacific Courier truck that drives Hans and his crew at the beginning of Die Hard. Now you see an explosion at I think it's a department store in New York City, and the truck that flips over is its counterpoint. It's the Atlantic Courier.
Yeah, that's funny.
Which I thought was a really
I
neat...
did not pick up on that.
Well, I just picked up on that this week. I never noticed it. So so yeah, you're definitely clued in at the very beginning that this is going to be a different experience, even though it's directed by John McTiernan, who helmed the first picture but did not do the second one because he was working on Hunt for Red October.
Right. So yeah, he got to come back to the franchise. I liked, that the second one had a different person at the helm to give it a different flavor, and it certainly did. This one goes back to, I guess, McTiernan, but I don't know. It's got a different aesthetic. It feels less. It feels more chaotic when it has to be, but also controlled too. That when it has to be, it has those beats that you liked in the first movie, but especially when the villains are doing their heist situation. Like, oh yeah, this feels exactly like something like a scene out of the first movie. But then the central plot of McClane and teaming with Samuel L. Jackson running around New York City and doing crazy things, like a wild goose chases and a series of games that the villain is playing with them. I don't know. I like that. I like that mix of tones and feels this movie has. It was unexpected. I guess this is 1995. So this is like 7 years after the first movie. So it could have easily just been a little bit more of the same, and I guess you could argue that it is, but in a different, in a new way. But yeah, I really enjoyed it when it came out in theaters. May 19th. I was working at a movie theater when this came out. And it really didn't, it probably played at the theater I worked at. But for some reason, I think I made it my mission to go see the same theater I saw the first two movies at, which was the Marlboro Theater, because I wanted that continuity to see the same theater. I think I did something silly like that, but I might have also watched it at my job as well. So I'd seen it a couple times at theaters, and I just remember thinking that it's kind of surprisingly fun for a third movie and gritty. I don't know if it's a good word, but it worked. Like what it was trying to do worked. Bring it to New York was a big plus for me, being a New Yorker. The New York I know and remember of this time period felt like it's all there on the screen for me. So it's a nice movie for me to go back to that time period and watch New York City. It has some crazy stunts that you wouldn't see certainly in a New York movie of these days, with the taxi cab stuff driving around the park. Like, that was pretty crazy. And it really works. I've only ever seen that in another movie. Night of the Juggler does a similar thing, crazy drive through the park like that. It seems like, wow, it's like I'm sure they had a lot of safety precautions. It wasn't like a French Connection scenario, I don't think, where they were just kind of doing things probably not on the up and up. Just like kind of a little bit dangerous. But you sense a danger in some of the things that happen in this movie, which is nice. For a big studio like summer entertainment. And the cat and mouse stuff, like the heist stuff, and having Jeremy Irons as your villain is always like a good thing. I'm sure he's played some villains in some shitty movies that I probably avoided, but he's great here. And some nice reveals in this movie, which are great. It's good to have your lead character, not he's broken. He's a broken man by the beginning of this movie. He's like, is he divorced technically to his wife at this point, or they're kind of like in the headed towards that?
I think they
But
just haven't talked for a
yeah,
long time.
yeah, he's like, he seems pretty like beaten up by life by even before starting this stuff, which is interesting. Interesting where it goes, because I feel like a lot of the events that unfold in the movie give him a new renewed appreciation for life. He's like an alcoholic. He's just not a very unhappy person, but going through this series of events of the movie kind of invigorate him by the end of it, which is fun. I feel like this is maybe the last Die Hard movie where it felt like McClane was a real character, was a real person. And then he becomes something else. But he feels real. And it was a great idea to pair him up with someone else. Having him being the lone warrior in this kind of scenario would have been a little too the same, right? Because he was pretty much that in the first two movies, a lone guy, with some help like here and there with over like, like the radio and the cop or the phone of the cop and so on. But here he gets to have Samuel L. Jackson kind of be like partners in crime, and they play off each other really well. Race is used not in an exploitive way, but in a way that makes sense for the time, and the way it's handled is well enough, and where I'm not feeling cringy. Let's put it that way. I felt a little cringe with race stuff, and a little bit, yeah, True Romance, revisiting that for the 30th anniversary. But I didn't feel it here, which is nice. And then, yeah, I just the series of us, the Simon Says game that he's playing with these guys is just a lot of fun. Having that central concept of like having your bad guy play these games, and then of course having reveals for ulterior motives is great, because like it would have been too I guess too basic to have it just be one thing, but having a nice reveal to reveal itself to be something else was great. And a lot of action movies have definitely repeated that after this movie. We forgot to talk about Die Hard 2 was the whole plot twist of that movie was used in a recent movie. That Christmas one with David Harbour.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was knowingly used in that movie, but I don't know. I felt like watching that Christmas movie with David Harbour, like, oh yeah, they're just doing Die Hard 2. Like I knew that was happening by the end of the movie. So I'm like, when they reveal in that movie, like, oh well, no, I already saw that coming a while ago.
Also with John Leguizamo.
Yes, that's right, exactly. So clearly they're big Die Hard 2 fans. Yeah, so Die Hard 3 has these kind of twists that I think I've seen in other movies after this, where it's like, okay, your villain is saying one thing, but really, no, they're doing something else. Which, I guess it became a staple a bit of these movies. Yeah, there's a lot of elements in it. Just the New York cop stuff. Could have been really cheesy and movie like interpretation of it, but I felt like the movie McTiernan's touch maybe made it a little more gritty and grounded. And I just like the contrast, the look of the movies different from the first two movies enough. It feels like hot and sweaty, like you mentioned, giving a different vibe certainly from the first two movies. And so yeah, everything about it, like, it's a really solid sequel. Like every time I watch it, I'm like, I'm really into it, and the cat and mouse game. And yeah, so it got a big thumbs up when we watched. I watched all 5 of these movies with my son and my wife. So this one got definitely got a big thumbs up as well. So what's your take on it?
Well, when I first watched it, I probably would have ranked the movies in terms of my favorites 1, 2, and then 3. But then watching it more over the years, it's definitely above 2 for me.
Interesting. Nice.
I like this one a lot. We'll talk about some of the things that you mentioned. The stunts, for example. The stunts are wild in this movie, but they also have a weight to them, that you don't see in a lot of movies. Maybe even the next one we're going to be talking about, and some of them are just sort of still jaw dropping, like the Mercedes doing the 180 in the rain while McClane is shooting at bad guys. It's just it's incredible. But there are also some really goofy things that just really bring a smile to my face or make me laugh, like people being propelled out of water into the air as cars are driving by.
Oh yeah, that was almost it felt like a visual joke, that one.
Yeah. It was great.
It was fun to have just like a joke, like why not?
When I first saw this movie, I think some of the things didn't necessarily bring it down, but just kind of like on my mind. The whole Simon Says thing is reminded me just a little too much of Dirty Harry, with Scorpio kind of sending Harry on these runaround missions at the beginning of the movie. But it's like kind of minor now. It doesn't really bother me. And at this point, I think we were seeing a lot of Samuel L. Jackson, a lot of him. He was really in a lot of pictures. And so having that distance from seeing him in a bunch of movies from week to week and watching it now it really benefits. Watching it like that really benefits. He's great in the movie. I love him in this movie. I wish he was in the next movies. He's terrific. And I think that the whole the plot of Jeremy Irons being the brother of Simon Gruber, it's a little, like kind of feels tacked on, but Jeremy Irons has a really great time with the role, and he's terrific in the picture. I love watching him throughout this whole movie. So this movie is buoyed by 3 really strong performances. And I really like the supporting cast. I like his co-workers too. Graham Greene, great to see him in a role that's not, dependent upon his race or influenced by the casting. Colleen Camp, it's wonderful to have some of these folks in here. I think there's more going on with the score. It's also by Michael Kamen, but than there was in the previous one. I think the previous movie, Die Hard 2, is a little more just kind of like replicating the tone of the first one. We do have different producers on this one. I think that maybe Joel Silver and Bruce Willis maybe had kind of an out on falling out on Last Boy Scout, I believe. But you can't really tell. I mean, it's still a whole lot of fun. I enjoyed the movie. It's kind of exhausting. It's there's so much going on. They're running from place to place, but it's just it's very different. And I think that Bruce Willis his performance in it is really very strong. I think that it's maybe my favorite of the 5 is this performance. You really feel that hangover that he has all day. He's really expressing it. And towards the end, he's running around on a boat, and he's got blood all over his face, but you can really see the contrast between the blood and his very blue eyes, and he's just got this look on his face that's really kind of unhinged, and it's unlike anything we've seen from him in the previous movies, and I think he's just terrific in this one.
I felt like he was really trying. Of course, Bruce, he has a history of that, of performances that are kind of really on it or not, and he's on it here, and for sure, and it adds to the movie too, for sure. It has an energy about it that works. Like you said, it's jam-packed with stuff, so it's almost exhausting, like you said, and But I like that about it. It could have taken the easy, lazy route, but it didn't. And maybe the key was just to have McTiernan come back and just wanting to do something, else with this, with the formula, and which is nice because it works. It works in this one. Yeah, and having a New York movie. I like the mix of locations too. It's nice to see all different parts of New York. And then having that disaster element again, with all these bombs going off, a train being blown up, just of course having a bomb threaten a school felt, like these are things like we could relate to, and as parents too, having fear of, and they were wise to like include those things that you could actually connect to, and not just like, again, cartoonish violence, which may be coming up. It just works, it works in that context. 95. So okay, May 19th, 1995, $90 million budget, $100 million at the box office, so a solid hit. $366 million worldwide. So movies were making, by this point in the mid-90s, were doing more worldwide releases, and suddenly this was like a kind of a big hit overseas. It opened at number 1. Number 2 was Crimson Tide. Number 3 was Forget Paris, which was also new. While You Were Sleeping was number 4. French Kiss was number 5. Number 6 was A Little Princess. 7 was Friday. Number 8 was An Englishman Who Went Up the Hill but Came Down a Mountain, which is unusual choice for a hit, but it was. Number 9, Bad Boys. Number 10, My Family. 11, Gordy. 12, Village of the Damned. I don't know. Fairly busy. Also playing Search and Destroy, Amateur, Exotica, Once Were Warriors, Picture Bride, Priest, Swimming with Sharks, Crumb, Rob Roy, Burnt by the Sun, Don Juan DeMarco, Panther, Perez Family, The Underneath, Circle of Friends, Dolores Claiborne, Destiny Turned on the Radio, Outbreak, Top Dog, Kiss of Death, Jefferson in Paris, Muriel's Wedding, The Basketball Diaries, Nina Takes a Lover, Little Odessa, and Goofy Movie. I remember quite a few of those playing at the theater I worked at. A lot of varied releases, but it was nice that Die Hard, the franchise, was still alive in the mid-90s. It took a while for us to get a next movie, but I'm not sure why, based on those box office numbers. It seemed like they could have kept going in the late 90s onward, but Bruce Willis moved on. He was doing other things. But came back to the franchise with our next movie. Here's the teaser trailer for Live Free or Die Hard.
Why are you so calm? Have you done that kind of stuff before?
Bruce Willis is back as John McClane, a New York cop ready to deliver old school justice to a new breed of cyber terrorists. When a massive computer attack on the U.S. infrastructure threatens to shut down the entire country over Independence Day weekend, it's up to McClane to save the day once again. And that's the back of a DVD box. Just looking at that.
Pretty short synopsis.
Pretty short. Yes, cyber terrorism, which was fairly, I guess, new concept, certainly in movies, in 2007. Prophetic movie somehow. Predicting what was to come with terrorism in terms of how they would approach it, not just physically, but over our computers. Not quite social media era yet back then, but certainly now. And maybe going that way too. So I saw this in the theater at the Regal Union Square Theater in Manhattan. I think I went with my now wife, then girlfriend, and I'm wondering what I was thinking of back in 2007. It just felt like a long time, right, to get another Die Hard movie, and it definitely felt like, okay, we have Die Hard franchise. What do we do with it? And okay, we'll just make this script that we have, right, which was WorldWar3.com, I think it was called. We'll make this into a Die Hard movie, and we'll get someone to direct it. The guy who did Underworld, right?
Yeah, Len Wiseman.
Len Wiseman, he'll direct it and make an action movie. And that's what it is. It's an action movie with set pieces, and then John McClane thrown into it. It's not so much centered around him, like the other. It's not a showpiece for Bruce Willis's acting. Certainly, it's not like a centerpiece for the McClane character so much as it is a action movie with John McClane. And I guess that's fine, right? It's just not a particularly, I look at it this way, it's not a particularly good Die Hard movie, but as an action movie, it's totally entertaining and silly and fun. I didn't like it when it came out. I remember being disappointed, like, okay, this is not the Die Hard movies that I remember. Certainly coming off of the third movie, which, you know, we felt was a high point for a third movie. Can they keep that up? No. Maybe at the time they felt like they couldn't. So 12 years later, they let it sit for a while. And, you know, I feel like they had all that time. They could have made a really good Die Hard movie. Come up with a concept that would have really worked, to have Bruce Willis in it, rather than just having him be there and then this stuff happening. It felt lazy in that regard. Like they could have really just built it more around him. But he was also a different person by 2007, making movies that were, I mean, very quality, and certainly that was set the tone for his later career. But yeah, I was just like feeling, oh, this is not a good Die Hard movie. The set pieces are really outlandish and cartoonish, like we were alluding to, and didn't have any real weight to them, like you mentioned, and just felt like they just were, I don't know, excuses to have set pieces rather than things that I don't know, I remembered very well. I only saw it once or twice. I revisited it, and you know what? It was entertaining. I mean, I was like, okay, this is like a fun, silly popcorn movie of the 2000s. You know, the 2000s is a decade I don't really like of cinema. Quite honestly, I think there's a lot of bad movies there, and cinema was definitely changing for the worse. And I could sense it at the time. I knew it was happening. I'm like, no, this is not the direction to go in for movies. But now, I guess in retrospect, 15, 16 years later, I'm like, it's okay. It's like, it's an okay, it's a time waster. It's a fun popcorn, whatever, summer movie. But it's not the Die Hard movie we remember. But I wasn't offended by it this time like I was in the past. I thought, for the pluses of the movie, I thought having Justin Long in it was like a good idea somehow. Like, added a silly charm to it, because Bruce Willis, I don't know, you weren't getting that with Bruce in this movie. He was kind of there, doing his job, but not quite bringing you the charm, a relatable charm. So you have Justin Long's hacker character kind of doing the heavy lifting in this one, bringing like a comic energy to it. And even though we're not hackers or anywhere near like a relatability somehow in there, cared about him. Having a daughter character, I guess, was another reason to have something to play off of, and I think that worked to some degree. Could have been developed more, could have had her more integrated into the film somehow. I think would have been a better way to go. Yeah, it just the big problem, I guess, the look of the movie, it changes definitely dramatically to that very gray blue, I don't know, look that a lot of movies had back then. Very bland look that a lot of movies had in the 2000s. That felt like it lasted for a really long time. And I was just like, this is ugly and doesn't really, like, I don't know, something about it, like there wasn't as much attention paid to that kind of thing. But revisiting it again, I'm like, it wasn't so bad. It went down a little bit better this time. And we all ended up enjoying it. Like my son enjoyed it. Like he likes he liked the element of terror, the cyber terrorism. He thought that, something, I guess kids could kind of understand more now than we could back then. And yeah, it was a silly time waster. And I'm just curious, Blue for a Die Hard, how about for you?
I've seen this 3 times now. I saw it once in the theater, and then saw it on Blu-ray. This is back when we were all getting flat screens for the first time, big plasmas, and we wanted to test out our equipment. So that was one of the ones that I tested mine out on.
Okay.
And then this week, and I pretty much had the same opinion each time, and it's mixed, but overall positive.
Okay.
I have some issues with it, but overall a slight recommend. The main difference, though, I think on this viewing is just the look of the movie is just insufferable. It's so awful, that orange and teal. It's throughout the movie. It's in exteriors, but then you'll have other exteriors where it's not present. So it takes you out even further because it's not completely cohesive, like the look of it. But it's just really awful to my eye, and just, I guess, trying to be pleasing to the eyes is what they're going for, but really it's just distracting, and I can't stand it.
See if I can try to make myself more orange.
I think one of the things that really I just didn't care for was, you have someone who's in the previous films, to a certain degree, he's someone who doesn't want to be there, but he has to be there. And in this one, he sort of jumps into action and uses a car as a missile to take down a helicopter. And he's certainly heroic, but the way that the film is staged and it's shot and CGI, it just really takes me out of it, especially when you compare it to the other films and kind of watch it in succession. Like especially the shot where they're in a tunnel and a lot of the cars are stopped, but some of them aren't, and he ducks down with Justin Long between 2 cars. Another car crashes, flips straight towards the camera, lands on top of the 2 cars right in between them, and then flips again off of it. It's just so cartoony. I don't like it. But the movie does have some things about it that I do enjoy. I really thought that, at the time, that was a good device. That it probably completely illogical or wouldn't really happen. But just having the villains be able to hack into everything and to see where you are and to know where you were, kind of all powerful. That was pretty good. I thought Timothy Oliphant was good. He doesn't have much of a character to play with, but what he does bring to it is kind of a dry wit, which is fun. But you don't really see that until late in the picture. But he does get off.
Yeah, it takes him a while. Yeah.
Yeah, so I liked him, but definitely one of the weaker villains, but not his fault, I don't think.
Right.
You know, and it just seems like it seems kind of like they're not really invested in making a good Die Hard movie. Bruce is probably putting in his friends. Like, I'm sure Kevin Smith was his friend. I don't really know the backstory, but there's got to be some reason he's in that movie. I think some of the set pieces are fun. Like there's a set piece where he's fighting Maggie Q on a truck that's being suspended, like in an elevator shaft, which is a lot of fun.
That was a good set piece, yeah.
And some audacious stuff too, like the I don't know if it's an F-18 or whatever it is that's battling Bruce Willis towards the end when he's driving an 18-wheeler. That was, I kind of had to laugh at that and go with it. So ultimately, I did just kind of go with it, but with some reservations.
Yeah, it's definitely like one of those movies where it's like you got to suspend all disbelief in terms of the action stuff, and just kind of enjoy the set pieces, how ridiculous some of them are and cartoony. I thought the movie did a fairly credible job of setting up all the hackery things, and it spends a lot of time with it too, which is like, that's why it doesn't feel like a Die Hard movie, because it feels more like a plot from another thing, and then eventually becomes a Die Hard thing. But there's a lot of like computer stuff, like a lot of like hackery computer stuff in this movie. It spends a lot of time with that, and I don't know, I thought I was like, yeah, that was okay, because I was trying to be credible with it, and I guess somehow prophetic with some of that stuff, maybe just by accident, where things were going with computers and hacking. It's again, it's like it's a lesser Die Hard movie for sure, but like entertaining popcorn actioner. There have certainly been a lot worse. No, this is certainly the 2000s, and I think this is definitely one of the more entertaining ones when I've revisited. It was fun. It was fun for sure. But I don't know how many times I'll go back revisit Live Free or Die Hard. I'd rather watch the first three, but in hindsight of where movies were to come, certainly some dumb action movies and some big bloated like summer movies and comic book movies and so on. I'd rather have maybe that and then some of the other things we may be getting. Coming up next, here it is. Here is the teaser trailer for A Good Day to Die Hard. Actually, I should have read off. I was gonna read off. Let me read off. I should read off the stuff. It came out June 27, 2007. Live Free or Die Hard. $110 million budget, bigger budget. $134 million at the US box office and $383 million worldwide. So it was actually a hit. It made money. It opened at number one. Actually, it opened up number two. Sorry. Number one was Ratatouille. But number three, Evan Almighty. Number four, 1408. Number five was Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. Yes, that movie happened. Number six was Knocked Up. Number seven was Ocean's 13. Number eight was Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. Number 9 was Sicko. And number 10 was Evening. Also playing, get ready for all these classics, Shrek the Third, Surf's Up, Nancy Drew, A Mighty Heart, La Vie en Rose, Spider-Man 3, Waitress, Mr. Brooks, Once, Wild Hogs, Parachutem, Disturbia, Blades of Glory, You Kill Me, Deep Sea, Hostel Part 2, The Invisible, Are We Done Yet? Meet the Robinsons, Hot Fuzz, 28 Weeks Later, Paprika, Away From Her, Black Book, Broken English, Eagle vs. Shark, Black Sheep, Kicking It Old School, The X, and Lucky You. How many of those do you remember?
Not a whole lot.
Not a lot. A
Black
few of
Book,
them.
I remember a few, yeah.
A few. Time hasn't been so kind to 2000s movies yet. We'll see. Maybe another 10 years. All right, here's our teaser treaser for our next movie. Here it is.
.007 of Plainfield, New Jersey.
Bruce Willis is back in action. Mind-blowing, heart-stopping, rip-roaring action as John McClane, the heroic New York cop with a knack for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. John's latest predicament takes him all the way to Russia to track down his estranged son, Jack, Jai Courtney, who has been imprisoned in Moscow. But the mission takes a deadly turn as father and son must join forces to thwart a nuclear weapons heist that could trigger World War III. There you have it.
That's right. They're nuclear weapons. Nuclear.
A good day to die hard.
This movie's gone nuclear. Oh wow. So I saw it at the theater at the AMC Empire Theater in Times Square. I remember going to see it. My son was pretty young. He was like a few months old, like 7 or 8 months old. I dropped him off at there was like a daycare in my wife's office building. She worked in Times Square at the time. And I'm like, okay, I'll drop him off at daycare, and then I'll go see Die Hard, the new Die Hard movie, and then pick him up. And that's what I did. And I thought maybe it would be fun to see it in Times Square. Like, okay, because, you know, I knew it was going to be a cheesy action movie, right? Certainly after seeing Live Free or Die Hard, like my expectations were really low. This was like 8, 9, 10, 11, like 6 years later. And my expectations were low, but I don't know if they were low enough for this movie. It just felt like while watching, I'm like, what am I watching? It doesn't feel like a Die Hard movie. John McClane is barely a character in this movie. He's there. He's at this point, he was kind of becoming a superhero type character in the last movie. Here it's like he's full blown that, like, this guy was just ready for whatever. Ready to be the hero. And it focuses on the son character, getting him involved in this plot in Russia, and is looking really drab and ugly again. And I don't know, it spends a lot of time with the plot, but I can't tell you anything about it that is interesting at all. I just can't remember a lot about. I mean, I watched it like at the theater, and I watched it maybe once since then, and it was recently, and I don't remember much. I remember the bad guy being not particularly interesting at all, and not really even super menacing like they have been in the past. I mean, certainly, um, I guess what's his name in the previous movie wasn't menacing. He wasn't meant to be as though. He had henchmen to do that. This one, I don't know. I just felt like the bad guy wasn't. It spends a lot of that kind of twists of like him pretending to be one thing and then revealing himself to be something else, like kind of thing. A really long time to do that, and it's clear. It's very clear and obvious. It should have been clear and obvious to the characters in the movie, but then they're not. It just feels lazy and badly made by director John Moore. And it's not engaging, really. I mean, I feel like Bruce Willis is not bringing it. Jai Courtney, whatever his name is a really bland actor. I'm not sure if he was cast. I'm not sure why he was cast, but other than like maybe he has a vague look about him, that's like a jawline that's similar to a Bruce Willis. Like, okay, he could be credibly his son. But in terms of everything that made John McClane interesting, the first three movies, like it's been wiped away here, and then not put it into anything else to play off of. So you have a bland younger character playing off of Bruce Willis, who's just kind of there to show up and do his job and not go home and whatever. Just felt really like, what's the point? kind of thing. I don't know. I can't remember a lot of the set pieces. I know there were quite a few, but nothing that really stands out to me. It's another heist movie, but the heist isn't particularly that good, like it was in the third movie. And I don't know. I'm just like, it's a real downer for me, because I'm even struggling, even just having watched the movie last week with my son and wife, and we were just like kind of like, yeah, this is not the best way to end the series. But I'm curious for you, did it get any better for you in this viewing?
Well, this is the one and only viewing, so
there you go.
There's no better to come from. I watched it for the first time this week. Whenever it came out and I saw the trailers, I was like, oh, I'll probably go see it, but I think it didn't last here very long. The grosses were pretty low in the United States, and I'm sure you'll get to that, but internationally it did very well. And I think that movies in general are, some of them are depending on those foreign ticket sales. So you look at these movies, and a lot of them are products of their time. Tastes change, filmmaking styles change, and I think that's what you see in the previous one, Live Free or Die Hard, and this one is just kind of a head scratcher to me. Some of the things that are different about this movie versus the previous four. This is the first movie where the screenplay was written as a Die Hard movie. All the others you'd mentioned they were based on other properties or other screenplays were adapted.
Right.
And this one differs from the previous one in that the previous one was a PG-13, and we go back to being an R-rated picture. It's also different from all the other movies in that it's pretty short. It's like 97 minutes. But
that's true,
feels,
right?
Yeah, but it feels longer than that because the plot, it's a little convoluted of a plot for a short movie. And I read the Wikipedia article about it, the synopsis of the plot earlier today, and I was just like, that's a lot of plot that just happened.
Right.
And like
a lot of plot, and that doesn't add up to much, which is
right.
Weird.
Yeah. Like you said, the villains are not great in this picture. They do try to, do some twists and some double crosses and maybe even some triple crosses. Ultimately, they're not memorable. And I agree with you about his son. I think his son just lacks charisma.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you needed something like that against Bruce because he's maybe phoning it in a little bit, in certain films. I think once you get McClane with his head shaved, that's when you can just sort of lower your expectations. First three movies, he's got a receding hairline, but it's still there. He's shaved, his head is shaved in the last two, and you know that you're in a different John McClane era right here. Yeah. Things I liked about it, helicopter, that was kind of neat. There was a really cool helicopter towards the end. It didn't look as thoroughly CGI'd as the previous one in certain scenes, but I know that they did a lot of practical stuff in the previous one, like that set piece with Maggie Q that I was talking about. That was pretty impressive, but just some of the shots were just not great and just lacked that kind of weight that we want to see in the movies. Yeah, otherwise not really sure why this movie exists, other than, I guess, to do it one more time and make a little bit of money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to end the series like that it's not an offensive movie. It's just kind of pretty forgettable for me.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if it's because movies have gotten worse or just had a lack of attention to detail, which definitely happens a lot with the kind of franchise movies over time. They get increasingly worse. I mean, you see that certainly with the Marvel movies, and they start off strong, but then like with each one, you start seeing kind of like varying degrees that work. And action movies, like there's not a lot of I guess there are not a lot of action movie franchises left that are still running like this. But yeah, I mean, the first three movies managed to hold their own and be their own thing and really work. This last two, not so much, but at least with the previous movie, you got an entertaining, silly action movie out of it, with some actors in it trying to bring it to another level, like we thought with Justin Long, trying to elevate it, or just doing like the heavy lifting. But you didn't have that in this one, so it was kind of like a lot of McClane in Russia with his boring son. So it's like, okay, not my way of wanting to spend 97 minutes. And like you said, those 97 minutes felt long, strangely, for a franchise that has movies. The first three movies, or I'm not sure what the previous one was, but they were over 2 hours. Like they're kind of longish action movie for action movies, at least, but they move quickly. Here it's just not good, not well done. So, sadly, unfortunately, this will be the last Die Hard movie, at least with Bruce Willis. And as a lot of he's sadly going through a lot health wise, and retired from films. And it's unfortunate. If they had properly made these last two movies to hand it off to somebody else to keep the Die Hard name going, I don't know if that would have worked, but at least maybe would have been kept a door open for the films, or maybe it's for the best that they're done. I don't know. It's I suspect, though, because like a lot of these people who control IPs, that they will try to redo Die Hard again in some way. I'm not sure what that would be like. What would your Die Hard 6 or Die Hard reboot be like? What would you want to see or not see?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, because Die Hard as a franchise is different from a lot of other ones, because a lot of it is wrapped around the charm and the performance of the leading actor of Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
If you look at the through line to the pictures, with the exception of two, the through line is family dysfunction amidst an action scenario.
Right.
And that's in this one too. But in the second one, it's just kind of like trying to replicate the action beats, but doesn't have that subtext. So I would think it would be something along those lines. I don't really even want to about it, to be honest, because I hope they don't do that, because I hope they see that what made that special ultimately, was Bruce Willis
Right.
over the whole series. First, like Alan Rickman is incredible in the first one, but you can't have him in the second one because, well, bad guys don't always make it to the second one. So I hope they leave it alone.
Right.
John McTiernan, when talking about this movie, he turned down Die Hard. I'm talking about the first one. He turned it down several times, and what he wanted to do was come to it and approach it in a way that he could make it a joyful or put joy into the movie. And I don't think you see that in the last movie.
Right.
And I think that you would want to do something that kind of replicates a tone that you have a mix of those things, where it's not too one way or another. It's not too just kind of by the numbers like the last one is. And buoyed by a strong central performance and strong characters, but really, I don't think we should do it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't think so too. I mean, I follow that belief with a lot of these kind of franchises being revived. Like we have The Exorcist coming out next week, The Exorcist believer, and I am not a believer in reviving The Exorcist. Clearly for financial reasons, much like the last 3 Halloween movies were, and it's not what I want to see. I just think you should just kind of leave it alone. You had some high points and just kind of keep it at that. Try something else. But yeah, like you mentioned, it really is tied to Bruce Willis, and I think, yeah, it's a good place to go and to stay, and just to I mean, I'll revisit these movies. I'll certainly the first 3 continually, maybe even the 4th one again if I'm in a silly mood, but definitely will avoid the last movie, sadly. Looking at I mean, I should even read off some of the stuff, like in $92 million budget, $67 million US box office. So they knew that the writing on the wall was done. $304 million worldwide. So like you said, it made more money overseas. It opened at number 1. Number 2 was Identity Thief. Number 3 was Safe Haven. 4 was Escape from Planet Earth. I don't even remember some of these. Number 5 was Warm Bodies. 6 is Beautiful Creatures. 7, Silver Linings Playbook. 8, Side Effects. 9, Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters. And number 10 was Zero Dark 30. A lot of other movies are playing at the time. I'm looking at the list. I'm not going to read them off because of a lot of like not so great movies, but yeah, it's just a different time. We're selling 35 years of Die Hard movies. We have a lot of joy, like you mentioned, that joy was an important part to make the first movie work, and I think you definitely see that with those first 3 movies, and lesser degree in the 4th movie, but it's there. I'm entertained by them continually, and I will be continued to. I got see the first one came out on 4K, which is nice. I don't like the artwork, but it's fine.
Do you have 2 copies of the 4K there? Is that another one behind you, or is that the Blu-ray?
This one here?
Yeah.
That's the collection.
Okay.
Of the 5 movies.
Yeah. The frame just cut out the top.
Yeah, so I don't have, and I guess I had the first 3 on Blu-ray. I didn't have the last 2 movies at all. So I had to buy this collection so I could watch those last 2 movies. So now I have all these Die Hard movies, but maybe I'll skip for those. We'll see. But then I need the I need this so I can put it in my Rennie Harlan section. So he has to go. Yeah. Rennie Harlan needs a section. Yeah. I mean, I heard they were gonna do another Lethal Weapon movie. Is that still true? Or I feel like they always like kind of like regurgitate that news every few years, but
I hear that story a lot, but I I would take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, maybe it's best to leave that one too alone. Who knows? All right, this was fun talking about these movies. I was glad we can finally get to the Die Hard franchise. Maybe the Predator movies at some point. There's a lot of varied ones in there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That'd be interesting too, I guess. Thanks, David.
Well, thank you for having me. This was kind of out of the blue, but I was definitely quick to say yes because I love Die Hard and am happy to talk about it.
Happy 35 Die Hard. Happy 10th. Good day. I'll leave it alone. Thanks, David. This was fun. And where could people find you on the interwebs to cyber stalk you?
Oh gosh, I have a Facebook group for the movie series that I run at Circle Cinema in Tulsa. It's called Graveyard Shift. The group is called Graveyard Shift at Circle Cinema, but I don't really have a big web presence. I just want to promote everyone getting along and having a good time. That's what I want.
That's always a good thing.
That's what I want to plug.
Yes. Watch movies. Enjoy movies, guys. Yes, you can find Retro Movie Love on Facebook, but I really don't spend a lot of time on there. Instagram, Cinema to Meep, look for that there. All the episodes are on your YouTube channel. So look for Retro Movie Love podcast on the YouTube. I've been adding old Patreon episodes on there. So look for those there too. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then look out for the 1993-a-thon by the year's end. I'm hoping to get to most of the movies that I want to watch again. And I have a huge stack. You can't see it, but there's a huge stack of movies that I watched already over there. And I have another big stack to get through, so I'll get to that. And then we might have something planned, possibly for October. We'll see.
2 in 1 month.
Yeah, it's very soon, guys. Thanks again, everyone. It's been fun talking these movies, and we'll be back with more soon. So look out for that stuff. Take care, David. Thanks again for chatting.
Thanks. Happy trails.
Happy trails. Yippee Ki-Yay. You know what? Bye, guys. Take care. Ciao for now.
Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee Ki-Yay, motherfucker. Yippee Ki-Yay, motherfucker. Whoa! Say hello to your brother. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Stay with me. McClane! Stay with me.
Dad!
On your tombstone, it should read, always in the wrong place at the wrong time.
How about Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker? The shit we do for our kids. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.